Okay, so apparently I am back to having to waste a bunch of time before doing the thing. So that's not super productive, but here we are. Um, uh, it's been a few days. I think the last day I did a video was my dad's birthday because before I left the house, they were trying to talk me into going for a ride up to Chicago area to get a puppy, and I didn't want to do it. So, I'm happy to say that did not happen. We did go out for dinner, and it was fine. Nothing really. Okay. So my brother and his daughter got back. They flew in at like 12:30 in the morning on, I guess, Saturday night, Sunday morning. So I went to pick them up, and because my mom's been pulling all-nighters basically for a while, she decided she wanted to go with me, which we expected that. She doesn't come up with it substantially ahead of time. It's just usually last possible minute. Hey, by the way, I think I'll go with you. Okay. Kind of knew that was coming, but whatever. It wasn't a problem or anything. And actually, we bleached my roots before we did that. And then had enough time to wash all that out, and I think ate something, and then we ended up going and posted the other video. And then we ended up going to the airport and collecting them, and then coming back and hearing all about all sorts of airport drama that they had on their trip. And then when we got back home, I drove back to my parents' house, and we let my brother have the car and take him and the kid back to their house. Then my mom and I stayed up and fixed this mess, which I definitely am not a big fan of doing it that late, and I feel like I've been kind of off on my sleep schedule ever since. Because it was like 5:30 in the morning when I actually went to bed, and that's not fun anymore. So yesterday I decided I wanted to go skating because I hadn't done that in a while since my brother had been out of town, and I think I went once while they were gone because I was watching their dogs and had other stuff to be concerned about on that end. And of course I was still walking my dogs where I could, and his dogs they're tiring. So mine didn't get walked every day like they usually do, and they did notice, and we're not happy with that, but it is what it is. So yeah, I skated yesterday, and the other day, last time I skated, I would say last week once, I realized that my wheels were all fucked up, and I knew they were all fucked up because they had chunks that were missing from them because I'd used them for so long. I think I used them for like a year, and a big chunk of that I was skating a lot. So there were big spots where it was just a matter of time before the pieces broke off. Then there were other spots where it was like, I don't know, the end of my thumb size that had like busted out of the wheel. So the last time I skated with those wheels, I wanted to say it was the right inside front wheel was doing something really weird. It's like, I don't think I can skate on this anymore. And I finally remembered to switch out the wheels. And they are wheels that the former friend from Derby that I parted ways with back in January after she tried to pull me into her drama and diminish my healing journey. Yeah, that drama. I already talked about that in a video. I'm not going to go back there. Anyway, we stopped talking after that. And there was a brief span of time where I kind of felt not bad, weird about using the wheels that she had given me, because she just gave them to me. Because I said I was on the verge of needing to buy new wheels, and she's like, I have a set, you can just have them. I mean, I gave her a couple boxes of hair dye. It's not an equal trade by any means. But I had said, well, at least one. I had said that she could have it, and then it's just like, when I went back after my elephant that we had painted together, well, I painted an elephant, she painted something else. But we had this, the last time I went up there to visit her, we went out to dinner, and then we went to this little ceramics place where we painted these things. Mine was the elephant, and it took me a while to get back up after it. And I kept thinking she better leave it there because I didn't want to have to contact her when I was going all that way up for my damn elephant. But she had made a comment at some point about maybe she would go to rescue them, and she could just pick mine up for me. Luckily that didn't happen. I did end up getting the elephant, and I left the box of hair dye, my stealthy little stop past her house to put the hair dye on the brick wall of her porch and escape before anybody said anything. And her daughter's boyfriend was sitting in the car probably just watching the whole weird ass moment. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, I finally switched out the wheels, and 13 out of 16 wheels or not wheels, bearings, because of course 8 wheels, 4 wheels per skate, and then 2 sets of bearings per wheel. 13 of 16 were hard as fuck to get out. And I remembered when I was going to get it that my original bearing press thing that I had broken last time I was messing with it. I don't know what happened with it. It probably got broke because it was in my bag with my skate gear when I was going to derby practice. And anyway, it broke, so I had to figure it out, right? So I had another one, because that one was the pretty one. Here's like pink and black, and I had ordered it when I ordered something else. So I get my wheels all, or I have this other one, just like a silver one, and I was trying to pull the bearings out of the wheels. 13 of 16 were stuck so hard that I had to, like, I got the little tool through the bearing, and then I had to get a wrench to wiggle it back out on 13 of them, and it was a big pain in the ass, but I made it work. And it's like, really, these bearings need to be switched out, but I don't have any more at this point, nor do I have the money at this immediate moment to go ahead and buy those, so I'm gonna make it work. So I made it work. See, I had thought that was why I held off so long on switching out the wheels, because when I got them, it was in the winter, and I was, skating, and it's like half the time there was salt on the ground to melt the snow. So I didn't want I didn't know if the snow would, or if the salt would fuck up my wheels. I didn't consider that it might possibly be fucking up the bearings until I was fighting with them. But made it work, and I cleaned everything off to the best I could before I put them back together, and got the the bearings all lubed up and everything, and put back in the new wheels. And well, they're not brand new. They were used a few times before she got wheels she liked better. But when I went skating last night, it was amazing again. And I think my average pace was like 8 minutes per mile. And that's kind of, I think that's the all-time best at this point. When I first started, it was like 14 minutes. 14 and a half. It was hard. But then, you know, of course, the weather and the practice and all that fun stuff. But yeah, with switching the wheels and cleaning the bearings and lubing them up, oh my god, it was amazing to skate. And it was kind of funny because the whole time, like, I was trying to figure out how far I wanted to go. It's like, you know, normally if I'm just going very, very basic, I want to skate at least 4 miles. And that day I was like, nah, I feel like 11. I feel like I want to do a little more than that. So I kept going, and then I hit I think when I hit 6, I looked at the time I'd been skating, you know, because of course with the lower time on actually doing the thing, it's like, well, I've been skating like an hour and I can still do more. So like, I think I got like I think 7 or 8 miles in under an hour. I'm not gonna math on that one. But it was more than normal, and I was like, I've already done that much. I think it was 8 in an hour and 11 minutes. I think that's where that was, because I remember hearing the app tell me I'd been skating for 1 hour and 11 minutes. It's like, okay, cool. So yeah. So I didn't catch it on any of those fun numbers, but I heard it when it went through there, so that was kind of fun. But anyway, while I was skating and having fun with it, I started thinking about, there's one, okay, my Animal Apothecary Oracle deck that I talk about all the time because it calls to me a lot. I started thinking about this one card that I had pulled a lot for a while, and it's like the shake, heal, release, move on. And it talks about how, you know, in the wild, when, like, okay, I think antelope is the animal for that one. And it talks about a study that was done where, you know, the guy was making note that, you know, when like a jaguar or something would like pounce on the antelope, of course it's like they freeze and like everything kind of shuts off, and then like they start, like all these things start happening to get them moving, you know, like to shake off well, I guess freezing isn't part of their process, in that it's like, you know, you get stunned into this thing. In that moment, it's like they start doing like this shaking thing before there is like this burst of momentum, and they start, you know, just like take off as fast as they can, and, you know, sometimes get away from the predator that's trying to eat them, right? And it talks about the importance of setting intentions with movement. And, you know, so if there's something you want to manifest, then start, you know, putting it out there while you're doing some kind of physical activity, whether it's walking, skating, whatever. You know, just put intention to movement to yield powerful results, right? So my birthday's tomorrow. And I had this thought, like this card came to mind, and then I just had this thought of like, okay, what would I manifest for my birthday, right? So I had some things that I'm not going to talk about here, but I'm pretty sure it probably wouldn't be that hard to to guesstimate if anybody really wanted to put forth the effort on it. But I'm not going to speak it here just from the standpoint of I don't want any other energies trying to get in the way of my potential manifestation. But I started seeing like these different scenarios of things that I would like to have happen. And it put me in a really good mood. Like just thinking about it. And, while I was skating. And it was kind of this weird shift because last night, like I started seeing things. Okay, because I see lots of things. I have like these visions I talk about a lot for potentials. And what I saw last night had like this strong influence of inner child, right? So like actually playing in life, right? And it was this, I was in a really good mood when I finally went to sleep. Took a while to kind of calm myself down because there's just like the inner child excitement of things. And yeah, I feel like that kind of excitement was kind of squashed in me when I was actually a child. I've talked about that enough on here. But yeah, so now that I'm like having these visions come to mind and, playing with friends and things in the future, and I don't know, it just seemed like there was a whole new sense of excitement with it. And yeah. So I was thinking, since I went to bed in a really good mood last night, right? Then okay, the Abraham Hicks stuff talks a lot about, whatever is there when you go to bed, that's the state you'll wake up in, like, to some extent, right? So, like, if you try to get yourself into the positive frame of mind before bed, it's easier to wake up in that space as well. Whereas also, if you go to bed and you're thinking all negative, it's easy to wake up in a negative frame of mind as well, right? So, it's something that's kind of always in the back of my mind, and like I try not to go to bed if I'm really wound up about something, whether it's angry or sad or whatever, without clearing it from my system first. And so since I went to bed in a good mood, it seemed like I should wake up in a good mood. I had this dream, and there was this oracle card deck that I was using, and like the cards that I was shuffling felt well worn, and it's like I don't recognize this deck, so I don't know if it's one that actually currently exists, or maybe it's supposed to be one that I work on at some point in the future. But while I was shuffling the cards in the stream, there were 4 that came out, 3 that I was able to actually see and focus on. And those were love, grounding, and yin. And I wrote them down as soon as I woke up because I didn't want to stop and take the time to actually write out the whole dream, but I wanted to remember those words because I felt like they were important. So I wrote those down, and the immediate thought was that I need to, find a way to be in the space of love, feeling love and as much as possible, and then focus on grounding that in. So like, okay, so I've been able to be in that space a lot today. So part of my grounding and process for that would be skate again. I walked the dogs earlier, so that kind of helped. I actually did not go with the protective or like super protective stones today. I've been this way out. So like the obsidian, the red jasper, and the mookaite jasper, I left at home. I was thinking that, okay, like the idea of, yes, they're protective, but is it possible that they're also kind of blocking some of the good from being able to get in, because they're blocking so much of the other stuff as well? Because we all have both shadow and light within us, and we have to kind of come to terms and balance those out within ourselves. I don't know. Anyway, it was just a thought, so I decided to wear less necklaces. Ones I did go with, clear quartz, because that's still, I think it's for, it essentially clears out some of the denser stuff as well. I think it just like clears your aura to some degree. I don't know. But I went ahead and that was the first one. That was going to be the only one that's like, I don't like just the brown this. So yeah, I kept going. Added amethyst, I think bloodstone, Shiva lingam, Horus, aquamarine, because it's blue and it's one of them for water signs. Yep, because aqua. So anyway, random little tangent. But anyway, I've been in a really good mood, and I've been able to stay in a pretty positive frame of mind all throughout, and haven't allowed myself to get pulled back into the negative stuff, with the one exception of when I woke up this morning. I think there was still some residue that needed to be cleared off of something that had happened that, okay, here's the lame thing. Okay, so back in 2023, before I was actively really aware of the need to set boundaries and protect my energy and all that stuff. So I had started my YouTube channel and all that. I was doing that thing and still trying to be in a positive state of being on this whole twin flame journey thing. And this thing happened where, okay, mind you, this was early in the journey. It was like September-ish, where I committed my love and career lives over to the universe to take the lead on. And then was after that I was made aware of who he is to me. I don't know what this bug is, but it's, oh, I had a bug that just landed on my thumbnail and was just chilling. It's like, okay, I don't know what this is, but of course he left before I could show him. But anyway, so when I was made aware of who the twin flame was to me specifically, I've talked a lot about my initial reaction was, yeah, right, he's out of my league, right? And then, the response back was, are you going to let us do this, or are you going to take it over and do it on your own, or you want to do it your way again? It's like, yeah, no, that hasn't worked. So that's why I just turned this whole thing over to the universe, right? So at the time I couldn't believe it, but it's like, what do I have to lose by taking the chance that it might actually be possible? So let that be the thing. And then in October, there was the day we went to the zoo, and it felt like he was there with me, even though physically he was not there with me. And then there was another time where I went to roller derby practice, and it was like a new skater workshop, and I was skating with all these people. I feel like I might have had an actual roller derby practice too. Because I feel like the new skater workshops were earlier in the day, and this felt like it was later in the evening. There might have been a couple. I don't know. But there was at least one instance where I went skating, and I'm skating with all of these people that are around me that I can see and talk to. And then at this other level, it's like I feel this other group of people that is not physically present, but yet I like that space better. So it was shortly after that I, realized that I had to retire from roller derby, because it was just kind of a weird dynamic of being in the 3D and experiencing things at this other level and not trying to talk myself out of them. So, yeah. So then the whole YouTube thing comes up, and I've said it was specifically because he had to be in some sort of spotlight so I could find him, but how was he ever going to find me if I wasn't doing more than I'd ever done? And I felt like I had to start the channel, so I did. And it was rough. But I was trying to do the things that I felt like I was supposed to be doing. And then there was still this moment, I want to say it was like end of November, early December, where I was still struggling with the whole worthiness wound and abandonment wound and all this stuff. And this thing happens where he posts a picture with some girl that he's on this tour with, right? And I had like this, it was just like this wash of like this jealous energy. And it's like, I don't even know this person in person. This feels a bit much. What the hell? And so I was trying to give myself space to sit with the heavy emotion and figure out where it came from, right? So it's like, okay, I've never met this guy in person. This feels a bit out of line for me to be having this feeling of jealousy come in at. What the hell does this mean, and is it for? And I was in the shower, and it took me, like, I have this thought process that comes back to this tattoo right here. Okay, so I've done multiple videos on it. Of course, it's from Hailstorm's Bad Girls World, I believe. And the line is, if you be yourself for no one else, they'll hate you because you're beautiful. And I got really set on the line of the song, and absolutely loved it. And after, listening to it obsessively like I do for quite some time, I realized that I wanted to have it tattooed on me, right? So that was the last, okay, this was tattoo number 9. It was the last one that I got where I went into it with this panic, feeling like this is going to be the thing that sends me to hell. Because, that was something that was always pushed down my throat with this whole, religious upbringing and all that bullshit. And while I didn't actually believe it, because it's the 9th, so clearly, I didn't believe it enough to not get it, but I did believe it enough, I got hung up on it enough to where I could not bring myself to check the lyrics over, right? And to make sure I had it exactly right. If I'm writing something and I include a song lyric, I will check and recheck to make sure that thing is right. And, because I don't want any part of, oh, man, you fucked that up, and maybe it doesn't mean the same thing you thought it did. Like, I want to make sure that what I am doing with it, it fits completely. But the tattoo, I couldn't do that. is like because I got locked into that sense of panic because ultimately that feeling of, the fear of abandonment, right? So is this going to be the thing that sends me to hell? No, but I had to go through the feeling of that because that was something that I'd been conditioned into believing, right? And it was a hot mess. But anyway, this jealousy thing triggers it, and then I'm like, okay, this feels inappropriate, this feeling, where is it coming from? And then it brings me back to this, the whole moment leading up, or like the moments leading up to getting the tattoo, because there was no way I was not going to get the tattoo because I knew I really wanted it. But it blocked me from being able to do the check and recheck and recheck. And there was a time where I legitimately thought I had gotten it wrong from what it was versus, it was like a grammatical thing. And like I made fun of myself for a while because I was convinced that I had it wrong. But then it was kind of funny because after I kind of set that down, that sense of making fun of myself even, it's like, it's interesting because it's like you can always find the things that line up with what you're believing, right? And that's what it comes down to. When I wouldn't check and recheck the verse before I, like going into getting the tattoo, it was just that because of that fear, right? But then I got it, and then afterwards I was like, oh, I got it wrong. And the pages I had come up when I went to look at it showed me the version where it was the other way. And so I was just absolutely convinced that that's what it was, right? And it's like, oh, I fucked it up. All because of the stupid panic feeling at, this stupid fear that I didn't really believe, but at the same time was still somewhat dictating my behavior, right? But then after I kind of sat with the idea of it was wrong and talked about it a couple times being wrong, I went back in and looked at it feeling a little more grace toward myself and, the feelings and that had led me on the path, and everything I was looking up after that was the way it's tattooed on me. So it's like, okay, so basically the universe will present me whatever I'm set on believing. So I don't want it to be fucked up. But every time I've looked it up since then, I found it the way that's like actually tattooed on me. So yeah. But anyway, like I had to face that whole process, and you go back to that moment of feeling that fear and that panic about this idea of, this is the thing that sends me to hell or whatever, that makes me somehow unforgivable. It's like 3333. Yeah. I don't know. Since then, and I think even then, it's been a long time that I've had this idea where I don't believe in hell. I think this earth plane existence is hell because we come here and we forget everything about who we are and what we're here to do and have to learn things the hard way and figure it out through the lived experience, find our way back to who we are and what we came here to do. And so, all the things that get in the way to block us from being able to realign with our actual path that we're supposed to be on. It's like, okay, like even the stuff for me that I've talked about extensively on here, like with the toxic family stuff, all that, it's like, even that was for a very real purpose. And there's 444 there. It was for a very real purpose that is absolutely necessary for the journey that I'm on and the path that I'm meant to be following or creating at that rate, because that's the difficulty of the healing journey. It's like a lot of what I've been navigating through, it's not stuff that I can learn from other people. It's like there are bits and pieces that I've learned from other people and their experiences and what I've read or heard of, people speaking through their experiences. But there are other things, it's like I have to figure this out on my own, because nobody can answer these things for me, right? And like I feel like we all have our specific things we're here to do, right? And we are essentially building bridges through different like subgroups in the world at large, if you will. So like I've talked about okay, so for my family, I've talked about how when I was in like 3rd grade, I remember thinking, we were learning about some civil rights stuff in school, and I remember thinking that I would never date a black guy because I wouldn't want him to have to face like the bullshit with my family, right? Even though this idea was mainly coming from videos that we were watching in school, it still seemed somehow like more of a thing, even though the way, like what I saw play out within my family wasn't necessarily to the extent of the things that we were learning about in these videos, right? So like I didn't see the especially racist things in my family, and I think I have heard them say some shitty things, but as far as like actual derogatory name calling things, for a long time I'd only heard it like once or twice, and it was from like my dad's brothers. It was a long time before I heard it come out my father's mouth, and since then I have called him out on many things on that end, with just saying shitty things about other people. And I think in the past year and a half, I don't know how many times I've called him a bigot and actually called him out on bad behavior. And, since I started even doing the YouTube thing and starting to take back my ability to use my voice, like before my grandfather died, I was calling him out about stuff. So the Sunday night thing has been a big deal because, it's the illusion of the big happy family. You go spend time with your family on every Sunday, and because you're doing that every Sunday and you're getting together for food and for, conversation and all that bullshit, it at least looks like you're more of a happy family, right? But it kind of glosses over all the not happy points of it. But anyway, I've talked about how my grandfather could never just sit quietly in the room. Like, I have no problem sitting in a room and minding my own business. That's usually how I prefer it, because my family's been my my immediate connection, and it's always been safer to be quiet, right? Because if I start talking more, that's when I get shut down more by the people that are supposed to give a shit about me, you know. And since I have since really come to terms with the fact that most of what they're doing has been the very things that have kept me from speaking so they can keep their illusion alive, right? But anyway, once I started doing the YouTube thing and started getting more comfortable with saying the things, you know, then when I'd have to sit in a room with my grandfather, and nothing was being talked about, he would, you know, he'd have to say something. So what he would always do is look for the thing about me that was different, that was the problem. And it was usually the lip ring in the last like year and a half, right? So that was always the go-to. And it just, like, he thought he was all cute and funny. You have a thing in your lip. It's like, fuck off. It's been there. And just whatever on that end. Surprisingly, the hair didn't bother him as much. Because there was never, like, he might occasionally say something about it, but I think it was something that was so accepted. And, like, my grandma at one point said, like, once I started coloring my hair this way, she, like, at one point she said that it seems more normal for me to have the bright colors than not. So I feel like it's kind of more true to who I am anyway. But I feel like that's maybe why he didn't go after that point. But anyway, that wasn't the purpose of that tangent. The purpose of that tangent was, you know, while I'd be sitting in the room, even if there were other people in there, he'd say the shitty things about the commercials on TV because they had to have mixed families now. It's like, racist much? It's like, what's the matter with seeing a family that's mixed? Why is that a problem? And, you know, when I started asking questions about that, they didn't like that. But, you know, I don't even know how many times we'd leave from there and I'd get a lecture from my mother about calling my grandfather out on something. You know, and this is, of course, 222, the same woman that we all went for ice cream one night, and we were sitting out in the car eating the ice cream before we went inside briefly to grab something before going over to my grandma's house. The thing was, we hadn't gotten them ice cream, so we wanted to finish the ice cream before we went over there. My dad had gotten out of the car and gone inside for a minute. He comes out to show my mom something that's like flat out racist, and I called him a bigot, and he didn't like that. He like stormed off like a little child, having a temper tantrum because I called him out on his bullshit. And then Mom looks at me like I just fucked up somehow and was like, "That is your father, and I have learned to accept him." And I said, "Then enjoy." It's like, I'm not accepting the bad behavior. I'm going to call it out as often as I see it now. So, and she still doesn't like that. And it's like every single time we butt heads, it's usually something on this end because they had to say something shitty, and so I came back at them. You know, because used to, the shitty things that they were saying were always about me. So it's like I'm used to being the one that, you know, they have a problem with. And a big part of that was they didn't want me talking because I get mouthy. And that ended up being something that I was kind of afraid of for a long time, right? But anyway, the point of that was because of my family, I had decided that I didn't want to date outside of my race just for simplicity's sake, I think, more than anything. But what it ended up becoming later was a means of there were people that were safe to have around and to be around that I didn't have to expect that anybody expected anything of me or from me. So they were safe to be around, right? And so some of the, like, my absolute favorite people that I've ever worked with were the black guys that I worked with. And it was because I didn't have to worry about, like, them trying to hurt me in any kind of way, right? And every single one I think that I've ever worked with at some point would sing Sarah Smile to me. So that was the whole thing. There's the one guy when I worked at the group home in the shadier area when I was first starting out. We had this shitty van that we had to go to the community in, and one day it wouldn't start, and I had a van full of people that had just bought some groceries, and we needed to get back to the group home, and like I was like ready to have a meltdown. And one of the guys that was there, he was like one of my absolute favorites ever. He's just like very calm, cool, and gets out of there, like pops the hood and checks it out, and I think talked to somebody nearby and was able to jump the van. It's like, oh my God. It's like, I don't know what I would have done without you here, man. And then there was another guy that used to walk me out to my car just to make sure I got out there safely. He actually ended up, when I moved to the other group home, there was a time that I didn't work there. So I left in November 2007. And then May 2008, I went back to the other location because it was in a better area. And they also had overnight hours, which night shift in the better area didn't bother me. I kind of enjoyed that time frame. Whereas the other one was like, they were staffed from like 7:30 to 11:30. And then there was no night shift at that time. Since then, they're not in that building any longer either. Ooh, that's a big ass spider. Yeah. Well, where'd he go? Oh, he's gone. Should book in it. But yeah. Anyway. But yeah, like I never had to worry about any of them on that end, right? And like the biggest thing was, it gave me some sort of sense of safety with men, because I didn't have to worry about just the expectation or whatever. And that, I think that comes back to, like I talked about with the military, they want things so set into this or that because it makes the ones that are supposed to be there feel like it's okay to abuse the ones that they feel are not supposed to be there, right? Which is essentially, I think, what we're seeing, at least countrywide. And it doesn't matter what group of people you want to look at, right? So you want to look at the ones that are getting kidnapped and removed from the country forcibly, or looking, or the assholes that want to think that they're like somehow protecting anybody by making it potentially an obligation to have to for girls to have their privacy completely violated to prove that they are girls so they can play girl sports. Now, having played roller derby with a lot of people that were trans, those are some of my favorite people to play with, like the sport. So back the fuck out of it. Because the rest of us that just want to be there, you don't really care about that kind of bullshit, right? So if you're there for the sport, it's for the sport, not to be assaulted before the sport just to prove that you are something, as though that's going to make you more acceptable to be there, because patriarchal types want to further throw their weight around, and that's all it is. Because, going back to that military, when I went in 2011, it was part of the military entrancing process to be violated in that way. To have somebody, okay, I've talked about, you go in to this room and you're in your bras and panties and socks to keep your dignity, to do these things that essentially they're talking about wanting to make sure like your spine works right, or like you can bend over how you're supposed to. Never mind the fact that it's fucking awkward to be bending over and having everything looked at by these people to prove that your body works the way it's supposed to so you can be in the military. When really it's just that, I mean, that's on point to allow people to be creepy, because I've talked through this thing on that on here several times recently, because at an energetic level, that is exactly the same thing as the people that are setting it up to making it okay to traffic people. That's the same fucking energy from this step to this step. That is one of the things that makes it okay for the trafficking thing to even happen by those creepy ass types, because they, are essentially in control of everything else, right? And I've talked about like that experience for me with the military. I think honestly, because there's the part where you're just in your bras and your panties getting checked out by the doctors, military doctors, so they've proven to be female as well, right? And then you have to go in where it's just you and then the military doctor of the same sex and a witness of the same sex. And they're looking around like they would if you were at freaking a gynecologist appointment, to make sure the inside parts match the outside parts. And for what? And I think the only thing that it actually did was give permission to the guys, the ones that are supposed to be in the military, right? So all it did was give space for them to, basically, okay, I've talked about the guy where we were in formation and we were standing outside for a ridiculous amount of time, and it was fucking cold because it was like South Carolina in mid-November, so cold in the morning, cold at night, hot as fuck during the day, right? So of course, because it's going to be hot as fuck during the day, you can't like go and like wear the warm gear, like your long underwear and all that stuff. You don't get to wear that. If you wear that, then you could have fucking heat stroke in the middle of the day, and that's not good either, right? But then to get you used to stupid shit that you might have to experience on deployment, we're gonna make you stand outside in the fucking cold. And for a long time there's a big space, or like we were spaced out normally and everything. And eventually the drill sergeant says, make your battle buddy happy. And what that means is close ranks so you can get a little warmer. You're not supposed to be touching by any means or anything, but get closer to your people, like those people around you, so you get some of the warmth from the body heat, right? And then some guy behind me feels like it's acceptable for him to push his dick into my back, because of course he's taller than me, and so he's behind me, and he's just whatever, right? And in that moment I couldn't do anything about it, so my thought was, who the fuck cares anyway, right? So I leaned back, and what happened was then everybody was talking about me in the barracks that night, because the drill sergeants listen in with the they had the intercom thing where they could listen in to everything that was going on in the barracks, and you didn't know what was going on. So 4444. And so basically the next day what happened was one of the male drill sergeants, the one that I have always referred to as a mean version of my brother, because there was like humor and all this stuff that like a lot of that he had was kind of on par with my brother, but he was like a lot meaner because of course he's a drill sergeant and they're not supposed to be nice. But he was looking at me, and I don't remember what exactly he said, but he said something. So that moment the day before where I had thought to myself, who the fuck even cares? That moment the next day when the drill sergeant said something and it was clear that he had overheard these people talking about me in the barracks, right? Like he knew something about me, right? That same damn look, you know, from like my fucking grandfather, from my fucking, that asshole that bullied me all throughout high school. Those that, you know, my fucking cousin was the one that started that bullshit, and he was in my same grade. And yeah, it's like it always goes back to some guy that thinks he knows something, and it's like that goes back to that point on the ones that have actually done me harm in any kind of way have typically been white guys, right? So we're back to that point. So going back to this whole patriarchal system that's in place, that's literally in place to assault like to abuse people, to, you know, if we other groups of people, then it makes it okay to treat them a certain way, right? So like for that whole bullshit with the military, and you know how, you know, I think there's been trans soldiers since then, but I know like that was some kind of big deal back in 2011, that was a process that we had to go through to make sure that the inside parts and the outside parts match the birth certificate, because that's just the most important thing for some damn reason. But the only purpose it actually serves was to separate you into the ones that you feel are supposed to be here and the ones you feel are not supposed to be here. And then if you know, since you're othering others within the whole, it makes it okay to treat them like shit, right? So going back to that point on like those along the way that have been my bullies or whatever, or let's go back to, you know, since we're talking about the military there, the guy that felt he somehow had the right to do that, right? Now, if I was in that situation now, you know, I've said I probably honestly would have gotten myself in trouble, because I probably would have like punched him in the dick or something, because who the fuck does he think he is, right? But can't really do that in basic training. I mean, me totally probably would have. But yeah, because I couldn't do anything about it, and I had that moment of thinking, who the fuck cares? Then I got to see how that othering thing, how when you're othered, it makes it okay for people to, you know, like freaking assault you or whatever. And why do you think sexual assault and rape are so prevalent in the military? Because they like othering people, right? Which is really aggravating in and of itself, because the fact that we all were in the military at all speaks to there is something about us all that's united that got us all there to begin with, you know. But then when you can break it down in other people within the collective, then, you know, you can treat them like shit. And then, you know, yeah. And, you know, just being in the National Guard, you know, so my 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks in the summer, I cannot tell you how many fucking sexual assault videos I had to sit through. You know, because of course, that's the best they can do. But what they're actually doing is, the more you watch those videos, the more it's in your mind anyway. So the more the more separation it brings, because it's not about uniting the group, it's about continuing the otherness. And now see, we have this space where you're here because you wanted to be here, but we don't think you're supposed to be here. So it's just reinforcing, like, everything you give your attention to essentially reinforces, like, the fears, right? So, okay, this is actually something that I've that I've been thinking through recently, because I keep pulling this one card from the Animal Apothecary deck. It's this, the Illusion, and it talks about, it's got like the shark on it, and it talks about how when you're feeding the fears, you're giving more attention and energy to the thing you don't want to have happen, and because you're giving it more of your focus and energy, it's more likely to happen. So one of the ways that's been playing out for my life was, okay, the video I did the other day where I didn't want to go home because I didn't want to have to deal with that puppy conversation again. I didn't want to have that conversation. I didn't want to get guilted into having to drive them up to get a puppy I want no part of. Because I was focusing on it, it was giving it more attention and making it more likely to have to happen. You know, and it didn't end up happening. The closest that ended up happening, and that was the day I pulled that card, by the way, and it was something that kind of got my attention on that point, too, was because I spent so much time just trying to avoid coming back home because I didn't want to have that conversation any further. You know, then it's like I get back and I'm the one that's like, I don't want this. I don't want any part of it, right? So then my mom says she's getting ready to take my dad out for dinner for his birthday, because his birthday was Saturday. And that's why they wanted to go after the puppy and all that crap. They asked if I wanted to go, and initially I said no. And then I think Dad's trying to get his feelings hurt and everything, as per the norm. But then when I went back in there, I was like, all right. I said, I don't want to talk about a puppy any further. It's like, I want nothing to do with it. So it's me bringing it up into the space, and my mom's like, we're not going to. It's like, you say that. Do I trust that? It didn't end up happening. There was no more puppy talk. Although the part that I had been aggravated about it to the extent that I was avoiding going home, it was more of a thing for me because of that energy I was putting toward thinking about it. So then it's like, what could I have possibly been doing with that time where I was just, trying to avoid having a stupid conversation? It's like, would it have been necessary even? It's like, I could have maybe been doing something more enjoyable, I guess. I don't know. But here we are. But yeah, it's like I was trying to avoid going home because I didn't want that to have to come up again. But then just the fact that I was putting so much time and energy on it, it's like that was wasting my time and energy. That's the only thing that did. But yeah, like you watch the videos with the people that have had the experiences, it brings it more to your mind, and then of course you're replaying those out, and it makes it more likely to come about when you're in the mixed settings, right? So ants. So back to the deal with my mom's phone and how, what I'm confident happened was she dropped it in the parking lot, and the employee of the store that she dropped it outside of had found it, and since she was so set on, all the negative, it allowed him to shift more into his shadow side, right? So where he decides, can't prove it, not in the store where there's the camera, so, just puts it in his pocket and takes it home, rather than, hey, somebody dropped this. And then, like, where I am, with like that whole thing is like I'm trying not to be in that negative space anymore. So her first reaction was, it's lost, it's gone, nobody's going to give it back. And when I've lost things, it's like, all right, thank you universe, it's coming back to me, and I will find it when it is time. And I've had a lot of luck with that, actually. I had like some reptile supplies I was selling to somebody, and I was missing a cord for a waterfall that I had in my gecko tank for a long time. If somehow I had this issue where I either had the back of the waterfall or the box plug part to it for the cord to plug into. I had a hard time having both of those together at once, so I had this extended period of time where, because I was missing one thing or the other, I couldn't use it. And it's like, because I was in this frame of mind on, I'll have it when I need it, it'll be there when I'm ready for it. I kind of, once I had somebody that was interested in getting the reptile supplies, it's like, all right, thank you that I will find this cord and be able to send all the pieces with this thing together. And I found it, like, it was so weird too, because it was like one of those things, it was like, I wanted to say almost immediately after having that thought, I looked over at this thing that was on top of the bird cage, and it's like this, like one of those desk organizer things, and something told me to go look in it, and there it was, sure enough. It's like, yeah, just like that, there it is. But it's like, because my mom is always inclined to focus on the negative, and that's how I used to be, so I can speak to this like from actual experience. That's how much of my life was. Because you focus on the negative, you draw the negative. So if you're only ever willing to see somebody in the worst of what you've seen of them, I mean, that doesn't allow them to be any other way, but that's probably not actually who they are too. So like for the guy that I'm pretty confident did take my mom's phone because she had already accepted that she was never getting it back, like, I don't feel like he was a bad guy. I just feel like her energy was what conveyed to him that it was okay to take it. So, if you want to only focus on the negative and only put negative out there, you're going to get back whatever you're putting out there. So, yeah. And there again, if you can focus on, or get people focused on the otherness, all the things that make them different rather than all the things that make them the same, or, give them common ground. That's what we're here to do, is build bridges between like all these different things, right? So, okay, like the thing that my family had an issue with the diversity on TV because the family was mixed. It's like, but they're building bridges between two communities of people, right? So that's not a bad thing. Now, I'm sure in the earliest phases of, that process, is probably substantially harder than it would be now for, people are more accepting of it, right? So that's the purpose. Building the bridges, making it easier for other people to exist and be able to have the family or existence of their choosing. And yet we have the world with the patriarchal structures that want to keep us locked into the otherness, so we can allow other people to be dehumanized, and we can sit back because it's not us. But then eventually, when so many people have stepped back because it's not us, it's somebody else, it's not my problem, and then enough of that happens, then it is your problem, and then who's there left, right? So that's what the patriarchal system wants to keep pushing, because then, they get to do whatever the fuck they want and run over the top of all of us, and there's not enough unity in the collective to be able to stop them. But I think that's why there's a lot of like these things where you have people talking about the things like on the YouTube and social media and whatnot, and actually drawing attention to places that we wouldn't have been able to have the attention on before. So we can build bridges and stop othering everything, and realize that it's not going to be somebody else forever. As long as any one group or any one person is getting excluded, it sets the system, it's the system setting up for the whole to fall apart, right? But since we're building bridges, it's not going to fall apart. The old way of being is going to fall apart, and it needs to go away. But not without creating something better in its place. So 111. Yeah. On that note, and I'm getting buzzed by whatever's. I think now it flew away. Go ahead and wrap this up and go feed my dogs, and then maybe go skate again. So, because it was fun with the new wheels and oiled bearings. Oh, it's so much nicer. So I'm gonna go do that, and also works on that grounding thing. Oh, that's the other part. Those cards that I dreamt that I pulled. The deck. I don't know. Maybe somebody will see this one day, and it is a deck that is out there somewhere, or maybe I'll find out it's not, and maybe somebody else will help me collaborate on making the deck. It was like black and like this really soft pink. It had like a couple different shades of pink, but like the soft pink was the one that really got my attention. And the cards, there's love and then ground, because got to ground in that lovey feeling, right? And then the other one was yin, and I wanted to say that is the feminine aspect of the yin yang, and it is speaking to receptivity, because you have to be coming from a place of love and ground that in, but then also be open to receiving the good that you want from the universe to bring into your life, right? So there we go. So those were my 3 cards. There was another card, but I didn't see what it was. So I'm kind of, it's probably like a tower or something. And then, that's the way things were. And now we're moving beyond that. Now this is how we bring in the new, right? So anyway, gotta keep myself in this positive frame of being and see what kind of magic the universe can bring about. Because tomorrow's my birthday, so maybe the universe will give me a happy birthday. But anyway, as always, I appreciate you. Until the next time, see ya.